Recently, the Asian Football Confederation released the club allocations for every member association for the upcoming 2026-27 AFC Asian Club competitions. And in Malaysia's case, it's still status quo as they keep one direct spot in the top tier AFC Champions League Elite and another direct spot in the second tier AFC Champions League 2. So, which means in this case, Johor Darul Takzim will still enter as Malaysia's lone representative in the ACL Elite for the next season, while whoever finishes runners up behind Johor at the end of this current season, whether it's Selangor or Kuching City, will go straight to the ACL 2 group stage for the upcoming new season. Now, with regards to why Malaysia has kept its allocation but sees neither an increase nor decrease is actually down to a few factors. And for those for those in Malaysia who are wondering why, despite JDT's Johor Darul Takzim's recent progress into the historic quarterfinals in the just concluded AFC Elite competition, which was won by their quarterfinal opponents Al Ali of Saudi Arabia, I think the answer lies in the way how AFC does its mathematics when it comes to the season coefficients and as well as the points that each member association has earned through their club's representations in those competitions. And while Malaysia was at a standstill, Australia, their closest rank rival above them, of which but through the release of their 2024-25 AFC club rankings, I think the men's club rankings, the competition rankings rather, they are only separated by 0.381 0.381 points between having an additional playoff place of their own and keeping what they have for their for next season, one in ACLE, sub 2 spot in ACL 2. So what happened? Why is Malaysia relatively on a standstill compared to Thailand, who now have three direct spots for next season's ACLE and one direct spot for ACL 2, an increase from a previous of 1+1 in the ACLE this season, or Australia having an additional spot through the playoffs, or even better, their I mean, you can say Vietnam, one indirect playoff spot. Why was that the case? So, coming back to what I said earlier, it's all down to the mathematics. And when it comes to the mathematics, we have to understand the following. When it comes to how the AFC calculate the points for the respective member associations and how the clubs have performed, I think it's a bit tedious, but I'll just explain a little bit in as brief as possible. In short, starting downwards from the 24-25 AFC men's club ranking downwards, not the current one, because while the ACLE has concluded, the ACL 2 and the AFC Challenge League, they have not finished yet. So the points are not tabulated and they will not be in time for next season. So it's going to be from 24-25 downwards all the way to the 2016. This excludes the 2020 AFC club competition season, where the COVID-19 pandemic forced the cancellation of the AFC Cup with the AFC Champions League, which is now the ACL Elite, being held in a neutral location in Qatar. Takeaway 2020 is based on the last 8 seasons, with every previous season having a fraction of what they used to have. So, if we look at the points that the Malaysian clubs have earned for the past 8 seasons, minus 2020, it's pretty clear that Johor Darul Takzin have been ever present in all 8 seasons. All the 8. 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and then you got 21, 22, 23, 22, 24, and 24 to 25. When it switched from a calendar year to a autumn to spring Asian football calendar for the club competitions. So, for JDT's case, JDT actually delivered the bulk of the points throughout this 8 season period. And this you have to take away the 2020 season, because 2020 was when JDT were forced to withdraw due to the pandemic restrictions. And that's also when the AFC Cup was also cancelled. So that was not in factor at all. To be fair to the other clubs competing in other Asian club competitions apart from the ACL. So, what about the other Malaysian clubs? Selangor. They only contributed to the rankings for 2016 and the 24-25 seasons. Kuala Lumpur City, who reached the 2022 AFC Cup final, they delivered an impressive 9.27 points, but it also happens to be their only appearance during the 8 season period. Sabah, they reached the AFC Cup ASEAN Zone semi-finals. So the points that they will have in that format is not as much as what KL City had gotten en route to finishing runners-up then. Same for Terengganu, also in 24-25 season, where they actually they narrowly missed out on the ASEAN Zone semi-final stage, just 1 point behind Sabah. Then you got Kedah. They were involved in the AFC Cup for the 2022 campaign, where they reached the ASEAN Zone semi-finals, but delivered roughly just over 1/3 of the points that Kuala Lumpur had. And that was the same season that JDT reached the round of 16 for the first time when competing in the Asian top tier competition. And then you have the now defunct Felda United, who represented the club in 2017. Yes. So all in all, the other clubs did not contribute as much. I mean, Selangor's combined points tally, even with the coefficients or the fraction of what they had in total for that season, is only slightly over the one season that KL City had, 9.27 compared to 11.34 for Selangor. So you can say that the other clubs may not be contributing as much. But let us also look back at JDT, and I'll explain why the points allocations can be so unequal that could have partially contributed to Malaysia being denied the ACLE playoff spot. I think when we look back in between 2016 to 2018 or 2017, I think points were still given quite heavily based on how the clubs finish in the AFC Cup. Because back then the AFC Cup, they still had the group stage system regardless of whichever regional zone. It's just East and West zone. And the points allocations, while still a fraction of that of the ACL, or which is now the ACL Elite, still carry some weight, especially when they reach the quarterfinals and semi-finals. And Johor did reach the quarterfinals, I think, in 2016 in their title defense of the AFC Cup. So they contributed substantially in that campaign compared to Selangor, who crashed out in the group stage. Sorry. So thereafter, it was also, but once the AFC Cup part became fragmented, like they were split up into the ASEAN zone, the Central Asian zone, the South Asia zone, the West Asia zone, and obviously the East Asian zone. That's when the mathematics gets a lot more complicated, and there are fewer points in the regional zone compared to in the other, let's say in the wider East Asia zone overall. So that's where clubs suffered. Moreover, especially when there is a shift in the way how points are calculated, because let us be honest, between 2016 to 2025, there are at least 2 points revision in which the member association club points are being calculated. At least two revisions. The first revision is with regards to the dropping of the national team points to reflect on the member association's overall rankings and their points that they collected overall. And once the national team points are taken away, a few nations suffered because of their club's overall poor performances. So there's that. The second one was like the point system evolution, or you can say shifts. The same also happened in the way how the playoff systems or the points, which has an impact on the point system, the playoff system, especially in the country allocation, like for JDT, how when they reached the ACL group stage proper for the first time in 2019, because of their automatic placing in the top tier club competition, the AFC rules then dictate that as long as a member association has one automatic member slot, that means the other Malaysian representative, in this case, if they fail in the playoffs, they will not be allowed to take part in the AFC Cup. So this was where JDT suffered in, or you can say Malaysian club football indirectly suffered in 2019, because while JDT got 3 points for the 1-0 win at home against Kashima Antlers and a 1-1 draw at home against Gyeongnam, Perak, the other representative, failed at the final hurdle, having lost heavily to the Japanese opponents, therefore 0 points. And because of JDT's spot in the group stage, the AFC then had said, sorry, no relegation to AFC Cup. So Malaysia had no spot in the AFC Cup. And that was one of the more recent systems before the current evolution of how the Asian club competitions has been. Then you got 2021. Again, JDT, they only feature in the group stage of the 40-team ACL, with the other representative failing to overcome the playoff stage or not participating, so no go again. So JDT between 2018 to 2021, in those three campaigns, they didn't collect many points. But at the same time, there was no other club representative who were helping them. Perak definitely failed in the 2019 playoffs. So in that aspect, not having another club to shoulder the points burden the way the Thai clubs had managed to do over the seasons, which is the main difference why from the 1+1 in the just concluded ACLE, Thailand will now have 3 automatic spots for next season's ACLE. And this is in spite of JDT collecting double-digit points for 2022, where they reached the round 16 for the first time, and 2025, 24-25 season where they also reached the round 16 after finishing in the top 8 in third in the league stage. So, but the other clubs are not picking up the slack. KLCT in their one season did their best. So did the other clubs. Selangor did alright for 24-25, but they did not advance to the next round, which had an impact in how the points were calculated by the end of that season, which is why Malaysia narrowly missed out on the ACLE playoff spot. So, in contrast, Vietnam, the nation that edged them, Vietnam got that playoff spot ahead of Singapore is partially down to, you can say actually it's a wide one, 6 point gap. Actually it's a 5+ point gap, because Vietnam had a wider distribution of clubs involved in the AFC club competitions, especially the AFC Cup, where Vietnamese clubs, I think particularly in 2019, where Hanoi reached the semi-finals and having decent points collection for the last few seasons, which has allowed them to feature prominently in, you can say, to feature to earn that playoff spot, which, while may not directly earn them a place in the league stage if they fail in the playoffs, but at least gives them the cushion of dropping down to the ACL2. Something Perak wish they had, but the AFC rules and tournament format and the way they allocated the spots for the member associations did not allow. So it's really a mix. It's not because there was no constant standard valuation in how a win is evaluated, like a win for the ACLE, the win for the ACL2 or AFC Cup, or a win in the Challenge League, or previously known as the President's Cup some years ago. So there is a difference in how the weightage comes in. And therefore, in this case, Malaysia suffered substantially because once JDT briefly lost interest in the AFC Cup in 2018 and their early struggles in the ACL group stage, I think this caused partially their inability to earn that playoff spot despite JDT's recent improved Asian performances. So their quarterfinal appearance this season came a little late, but at least when the next club allocations come for the 27-28 season, that's when Malaysia may get a playoff spot at last. Or perhaps another allocation for a Malaysian club, for all we know, because by then the 2016 point allocation would be excluded, which might be to their benefit, because the points they will have definitely collected this season will be a lot more than what they had the previous season. But Selangor's inaptness in this season's ACL2 group stage could come back to haunt Malaysia again. So overall speaking, it's not just about JDT shouldering the burden, but it is also a combination of good one-offs like Kuala Lumpur City in 2022 aren't enough. You need other Malaysian clubs, whether they're competing in ACL2 or ACLE, or even, I mean, right now, unlike, they don't have a spot in the third tier ACL AFC Champions Challenge League, like Cambodia, how they boosted their performances in recent seasons through the AFC Cup and also in the Challenge League, that has allowed them to be directly promoted from the third tier Challenge League to the second tier ACL2 for next season. So I think the club's not earning enough points, and the way the valuation had impacted the tournament stand, because it's not a constant thing. It's one day is this standard, the next day, the next season is another different standard. So partially AFC has to bear some responsibility for that inconsistency in valuation of the results, of the outcomes in the allocations, that has partially also impacted the outcome in which the various leagues in Asia benefit, or to their detriment find that they lose their places, especially in the top tier ACLE or ACL2, like how Indonesia is still wondering when they can get back to having two clubs in ACL2. But Malaysia, for now, they still keep the status quo. And with JDT still expected to shoulder the burden, we probably may hope that, although it's likely to be Selangor for next year's ACL2, we hope that Selangor can do a lot better than what they did this season in the second tier Asian club competition. Otherwise, those points, although the failure to get points, like what happened to other clubs in previous seasons, will really come back to haunt Malaysian club football where Asia is concerned.